Have you ever sat down to do something important, opened your laptop, and then somehow ended up watching a 45-minute documentary about the migration patterns of Arctic geese? You did not plan that. You did not want that. And yet, here you are. That is not laziness. That is your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. And once you understand the neuroscience behind it, you will never look at procrastination the same way again. Today we are going to go deep into what is actually happening inside your skull when you avoid hard tasks. We are going to talk about brain regions, chemical signals, and the specific psychological tricks your nervous system pulls on you without your permission. And more importantly, we are going to talk about what you can actually do about it. Let us start with the most important thing to understand. Procrastination is not a time management problem. Researchers and neuroscientists have been saying this for years, and most people still do not believe it. We keep buying planners, downloading productivity apps, and building elaborate color-coded schedules. And then we ignore all of them. Because the real issue has nothing to do with organization. It has everything to do with emotion. Here is what is happening at the neurological level. Your brain has two systems that are constantly in conflict with each other. On one side you have the limbic system, which is ancient, fast, and almost entirely focused on how things feel right now. On the other side you have the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for planning, reasoning, long-term thinking, and impulse control. These two systems are always negotiating. And when it comes to hard, unpleasant, or anxiety-inducing tasks, the limbic system almost always wins in the short term. The limbic system includes a small but incredibly powerful structure called the amygdala. The amygdala's primary job is threat detection. When you perceive danger, real or imagined, the amygdala fires up and initiates an avoidance response. Now here is the fascinating and slightly terrifying part. Your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a physical threat like a predator and a psychological threat like a project that might reveal your inadequacy or a task you are afraid to fail at. To your amygdala, opening that difficult email or starting that intimidating project feels almost identical to stepping towards something dangerous. And so it pushes you away. This is where the brain's reward system enters the picture. When you avoid the uncomfortable task and do something easier instead, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical associated with reward and motivation. It is what drives you toward pleasurable things. And when you switch from the hard task to scrolling your phone or making another cup of coffee, that switch itself becomes the reward. Your brain learns that avoidance equals relief, and it begins to automate that response. That is why procrastination feels so involuntary after a while. You are not choosing to avoid the task anymore. Your brain has literally been conditioned to do it. There is also something researchers call temporal discounting at play here. The prefrontal cortex can hold the image of a future reward in mind. It knows that finishing the project will feel amazing, that the deadline matters, that your future self will thank you. But the limbic system is completely uninterested in the future. It only cares about right now. And right now, the task feels uncomfortable and the phone feels pleasant. So the brain applies a kind of discount to future rewards. The further away the payoff is, the less your nervous system values it. This is why deadlines that are weeks away feel almost abstract, and why people so often wait until the last possible moment when suddenly the future has collapsed into the present. Now let us talk about something called the default mode network. This is a set of brain regions that activate when you are not focused on a specific task. When you are daydreaming, when your mind is wandering, when you are resting. Research has shown that people who struggle with procrastination often have stronger connectivity between the amygdala and the default mode network. What this means practically is that when your mind drifts, it tends to drift toward anxiety, self-doubt, and avoidance-oriented thinking more readily. So the idle mind is not a neutral place for a chronic procrastinator. It becomes a generator of reasons not to start. And then there is the role of perfectionism, which is far more neurologically interesting than it sounds. When we set impossibly high standards for a piece of work, the brain registers the likely gap between our current ability and the ideal outcome as a threat. The amygdala fires. Avoidance kicks in. This is why the most talented, capable, and conscientious people are often the worst procrastinators. It is not that they do not care. It is that they care so intensely that starting feels like walking toward potential failure, and the brain will do almost anything to prevent that. So what do we actually do with all of this information? Because understanding the problem is only valuable if it leads somewhere useful. The first tool comes directly from the neuroscience. If the brain avoids tasks that trigger threat responses, the goal is to reduce the perceived threat before you even begin. One way to do this is through what researchers call implementation intentions. Instead of saying you will work on the project today, you specify exactly when, where, and how you will do it. I will sit at my desk at 9 in the morning, open the document, and write 200 words. The specificity shrinks the psychological distance between you and the task, which lowers the amygdala's alarm response. Studies show this technique significantly increases follow-through. The second tool involves working with dopamine rather than against it. Since your brain rewards avoidance, you need to rewire it to reward starting. This is the logic behind the 2-minute rule and similar approaches. The goal is not to complete the task in 2 minutes. The goal is to make starting so small and so easy that the brain stops perceiving it as threatening. When you begin the task and experience even a tiny sense of progress, your brain releases dopamine in response to that movement forward. Over time, the reward signal begins to attach to starting rather than avoiding. Third, you need to understand the role of environment in all of this. The brain is constantly taking cues from its surroundings. If your phone is visible on your desk, your brain already knows the escape route before you even feel uncomfortable. Reducing friction toward the hard task while increasing friction toward the escape routes is one of the most evidence-backed strategies in behavioral neuroscience. Move the phone to another room. Close the tabs. Your prefrontal cortex will thank you because you have removed the moment of temptation entirely. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, practice self-compassion after you procrastinate. This sounds counterintuitive, but the research supports it strongly. When people feel shame and self-criticism after avoiding a task, their stress response intensifies, which makes the next attempt even harder. People who treat themselves with understanding and recognize that avoidance is a normal human response actually return to tasks faster and perform better than those who spiral into guilt. The guilt is not motivating you. It is deepening the pattern. Your brain is not broken. It is doing something quite logical given how it evolved. It is protecting you from discomfort, seeking reward, and avoiding perceived threats. The problem is that this ancient system was built for a very different world, one where most threats were physical and immediate. In the modern world, the most important things we need to do are often abstract, future-oriented, and uncomfortable, which puts us in constant friction with our own nervous system. But here is what makes this genuinely hopeful. The brain is also incredibly plastic. It rewires based on repeated experience. Every time you use these strategies, every time you choose to start despite the discomfort, every time you treat yourself with compassion rather than punishment, you are literally reshaping the neural pathways that govern your behavior. You are not fighting your brain. You are teaching it something new, and that changes everything.